Thank you so much for coming to the Center for Art in Wood this evening. My name is Jennifer Nava-Milliken. I am the Center's Artistic Director, and I'm honored to be here today in order to participate in this lively discussion. Before we get started, I do want to mention that the Center for Art in Wood is sited on the unsurrendered and sovereign territory of the Lenape people, who were and continue to be active stewards of these lands and of the river of human beings, more widely known as the Delaware River. We humbly recognize and express our gratitude to those whose territory is on which we work, and we will work to dismantle ongoing legacies of settler colonialism, recognizing the hundreds of indigenous nations who continue to resist, live, and uphold their sacred relations across their lands, including their deep material culture and traditions and heritage, including adornment and jewelry. So, welcome to What is Contemporary Jewelry? This moment is very long in anticipation for me and the center and our four panelists here today with us. It comes in conjunction with the exhibition, Wood and Body Expressions in Contemporary Jewelry, which is now on view at the Center for Art in Wood through November 7th, 2021. So you have a few more months or a couple more months to view it. The exhibition presents 21 works of adornment in wood by artists from around the world. You can tour the exhibition online as well, so please take a look when you have an opportunity. And of course, the tour will remain on the center's website long after the exhibition is closed. This show was originally scheduled to open in the spring of 2020, so I thank the panelists today. They've all waited a long, long time to engage in the discussion. So let's meet them. And each of you, when I start to read your bio, can you just give a wave so everybody knows who you are, even though you have your labels? So I'm going to start with Helen Williams, Drutt English, because we're going alphabetically. Helen is the founder and director of her eponymous gallery in Philadelphia, which was founded in 1973 and continued into 2002. It was among the first in the United States to commit to the modern and contemporary craft movement. Helen has received numerous awards and holds 3 honorary degrees, including a doctorate from Alfred University. Helen is a fellow of the American Craft Council and serves many arts and education-oriented boards, including the American Board of the Ilias Lalunas Jewelry Museum in Athens. She was a trustee of the Archives of American Art, the Smithsonian Institution, and she served on the advisory committee of the Indian and Himalayan Art Department in the Philadelphia Museum of Art. She was also a curatorial consultant for the Hermitage Museum Foundation of the American branch. She has shaped and built many contemporary craft holdings for institutional collections around the world, including the State Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg in Russia and the National Museum of Sweden. Her own collection of international studio jewelry has been exhibited in the US and abroad. In 2002, 800 works entered the permanent collection of the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston, an incredibly generous gift. Her extensive work in contemporary jewelry includes internationally touring jewelry exhibitions, most recently Rings, that's Rings exclamation point, at the Moore College of Art in Philadelphia, which closed at the end of this summer. But the exhibition will travel in 2022, so you haven't missed your chance to see it. She's also written a number of books, including the seminal Jewelry of Our Time, Art, Ornament, and Obsession with Peter Dormer. And we are very, very grateful to have her here today. Thank you, Helen. Next, Elizabethessner. Elizabeth is an independent curator, writer, and researcher based in Brooklyn. She's curated exhibitions for the Aldrich Contemporary Art Museum in Connecticut, the Arizona State University Art Museum, and R & Company Gallery in New York, where she organized Body/Motion, a solo exhibition of the Japanese-born, Thailand-based jeweler and artist Aya Ito. Recently, Elizabeth served as a researcher for the aforementioned Rings exhibition, which was curated by Helen. She was a co-author and researcher for the recently published Shapes from Out of Nowhere, Ceramics from the Robert A. Ellison Jr. Collection, the companion catalog to an exhibition and gift to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. A 2017 curatorial fellow with the Center for Craft, Elizabeth received her MA from the Bard Graduate Center in New York. Thank you, Elizabeth, for being here.
Thank you.
Caroline Gore is an artist based in Philadelphia. She runs a studio practice that is deeply rooted in jewelry and metalsmithing processes. Although the outcomes vary in media, scale, and implementation, they range from jewelry to sculptural installations, photography, and large-scale drawing. She maintains a studio in Northeast Philly at the Crane Arts Building. Her teaching career has spanned 20 years at numerous institutions in the United States as well as abroad. Her work often circles around investigations of sight and our direct and often indirect relationships with place and objects through experience and remembering. Her work can be found in the permanent collection of the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, the MFA Boston, Racine Art Museum, and numerous private collections. And I believe, Caroline, you also have a piece in the Rings exhibition.
Yes.
Caroline's work is represented by Egan Day in Philadelphia, which is located at the Rittenhouse Hotel, as well as Gallery Loop in Montclair, New Jersey. Thank you, Caroline, for joining us.
Thank you.
And our, let's see, bringing up the rear, it's Bella Neyman, the co-founder of New York City Jewelry Week. Bella is an independent curator and journalist specializing in contemporary jewelry. Most recently, she has served on the curatorial advisory committee for 45 stories in jewelry, 1947 to now, at the Museum of Arts and Design in New York. It's currently on view through 2022, I believe. Since graduating with her MA in Decorative Arts and Design History from Cooper Hewitt, the Smithsonian Design Museum, and Parsons, the New School for Design, she has worked for some of New York City's leading design galleries. Bella's articles and writings have been published in the New York Times, American Craft, and the magazine Antiques, and she's a frequent contributor to Metalsmith magazine. She lectures on topics related to the history of jewelry at the 92nd Street Y Jewelry Center and Christie's Education. She's also on the board of Art Jewelry Forum. And I will say, having known Bella for a long, long time, I have never met a stronger advocate for contemporary jewelry. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Although I feel that the panelists here tonight are, especially Helen,
Yes,
supersedes us all. So we owe a lot to Helen. So
absolutely. I'll just say we have a powerhouse panel with us tonight, and we could, if anyone can define and can give a concept of contemporary jewelry, it's our panel tonight. So thank you all for joining. I'm going to leap in with our first question. I encourage everybody watching tonight to add your questions to the chat, and we will leave space to address them. I'm going to lead in with an attempt to ask our panel to define for us contemporary jewelry and how it connects to more conventional understandings of jewelry as a noun. Which are historical, ethnographic, fine, or mass market, mass produced.
Why is contemporary jewelry different from any other aspect? I don't understand that. I mean,
well, then maybe I can phrase the question. How does it fit?
Well, it reflects our time and history, and it reflects the expansion of materials and technology that are available to us that were not available to us in other decades or centuries, but it's contemporary, you know. Jewelry is, you know, whatever age or time that it's made is no different. It's still the most personal of all art forms. It has intimate connections with the human being. It's inescapable, you know, it's an inescapable part of our being. And we wear it, it reflects who we are, what we're thinking. It's a communicator, it's a communicator. I have a wonderful example of the fact that in my family, jewelry is our novel. We have a necklace that I had made for my daughter that has 3 generations of pieces that belong to my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mother, my father, my aunt. And it's not written, but you can go through every single piece and you can tell the history of the family over 150 years. That's what jewelry does.
Yeah.
It speaks symbolically.
Thank you. I love what you said about the connections between generations and families and heritage. And I think that's one of jewelry's defining characteristics across all interpretations of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes the titles, the definitions, I think that's sort of what gets in the way. I think that's also what prevents contemporary jewelry from sort of breaking out into the mass market, because we're putting the stamp on it, and I agree with Helen, is that it is the most personal of all art forms, right? And it's the one that I think, has the most longevity, right? Like, to Helen's point, you pass it down from generation to generation. I don't think we should be so focused on, oh my God, I'm so sorry, you hear all those sirens in the background. Terrible. I don't think we should be so, focused on, contemporary versus fine versus, vintage. I think we should embrace it as jewelry and own it. And by owning it, I don't mean like purchase it. Yes, we should do that too. But I mean, we should own it as something that falls in line with all of jewelry. And I think that will do us much more good than trying to sort of caricaturize it.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to put things in little like neat packages, right? And since like the beginning of time, people have put things on their body, and this is kind of where we all fit together. And I was thinking about this question over the last week of what is contemporary jewelry, and if we I agree with everything that has been said so far, that, jewelry is jewelry, and we are here as contemporaries all together, right? And, who's to say that the incredible craftsmanship of fine jewelry is any different than what we do in contemporary jewelry with materials that may have less inherent value. You can think about it as shopping small, in like the broadest sense of how we can bring an audience to our community. And if we think about it as shopping small, then everything fits, right? From the person that is doing commission work and doing engagement rings to people that are making work out of skateboards like Tara Locklear and, everything else. And so I think it's, what we're doing kind of speaks to the times, and kind of a democratization of materials and kind of letting them speak for themselves through, by us giving them a platform, those materials a platform, and also giving permission to a collector or someone that wants to wear it to take it on, right, and walk it around and show it off. So we just find ourselves where we are right now in 2021.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, because I think you're absolutely right. There is this sort of democratization, as you talked about. Helen, I know, has talked about this sort of almost ambassadorship.
Yeah.
It is this incredibly public form of both expression and art. So it really is this kind of beautiful intersection of an artist creating work, a person who is wearing it, and this beautiful conversation, but then also the viewer, which doesn't have to happen in a museum. It doesn't have to happen in a gallery. It happens in a train station. It happens in a grocery store. And I think for this particular moment, that's something really to be celebrated. That
I remember once missing my train, telling the woman in the station who was washing the floor about my Albert Paley brooch. And I got so involved with her and the dialogue that the train left. So that in a way, it's also, jewelry's meant to be worn. It's not meant to be hidden in a drawer. It's meant to be worn or hung on your wall. You know, it's a badge of knowledge. It's a mark of your own experience and your own pageantry. It's an amazing thing, and it's a communicator. You can't go to a meeting holding a pot if you want to tell the curator about what's happening in the craft movement. You can't hold a chair. You have to wear a piece of jewelry, you know, so that they say, what is that? What's happening? You know, it speaks for the entire field. It speaks for all media. And that's what's so very important for it.
Yeah, and you know, we make choices about what we put on our bodies in all kinds of ways, right? You know, from the sneakers that we wear to, you know, the color of our top or whatever. And so, I mean, and to like further think about this democratization of materials and access, you know, it's something to think about, you know, who has access to this work, right? And you know, it's a range, you know, of price points and materials, and I kind of lost my way there. I just wanted to talk about access, you know? But anyway.
But Caroline, I appreciate what you said about shopping small. I think that's a really important aspect, right? Is directly supporting the artist as well, you know? And I think
choice.
Yeah, making that choice. And I think especially, you know, over the last, you know, 18 months, I think that sort of come into purview even more, right? This idea of that you really want to support, you know, the artists or, you know, the designers who, you know, are sort of really relying, right, on like, you know, these transactions. So I really love that idea, because I never applied the shop small idea to this, but when you said that, I was like, yes, that's such a great way to think about it.
Yeah, because it's, you know, it's who is making those choices to seek out artists, you know, and to seek out, you know, the person that has their hand on the material to make the thing, right? And you know, and I just think about all of the beautiful fine jewelry that is represented by a brand, you know, where the invisible craftsman or craftsperson is there. You know, it's just as significant, but and to be revered, but it's a different choice in terms of consumer direction, I guess.
Do you, as an artist, find that you have a relationship with your clients or your collectors?
Yes, very much so. I mean, I like to build it that way. And, you know, I mean, I do work on commission, but I also, you know, work through Patty Bleicher at Loop, and, you know, and she takes that over for me, and I'm very appreciative, you know, of that relationship and connection. But I do like to know who's wearing my work, you know, and, you know, if I'm doing something for someone, you know, on a commission basis, I want to make it work for them. You know, I want to find a way to weave in their narrative, to weave in their family history in some way, you know, and because they may have ideas of what they want, but there may be a different material that speaks to their intention of whatever they're marking with this piece of jewelry, that's more appropriate or more significant that they didn't know about, you know. And so having that relationship and that discussion is really, really important. You know, maybe glass is the right thing instead of a ruby, you know, maybe, you know, who knows, you know, but you don't know unless you have that conversation.
Sure. Being that many people around the world, almost every society has a traditional, a heritage, and a personal connection with jewelry. For the reasons that were already discussed, I'd love to hear your stories about jewelry and how you became connected with it and decided to direct your careers in some either, but really focused on jewelry or more expansively in contemporary craft with a dedication to jewelry.
You mean how it started?
For you personally.
For me personally,
Mhm.
well, when I was 7, I had a pin that said Helen in Marcus Heights. And then I wore a circle pin because in my generation, a string of pearls and a circle pin were symbolic of, you know, allowing yourself to be elaborately, you know, to be elaborately
Adorned.
adorned, right? However, I started an organization called PCPC, which was the Philadelphia Council of Professional Craftsmen. And we had a meeting in the living room of Stanley Lexon, who was teaching at Tyler School of Art. And after the meeting, he said, would you like to see a brooch that I'm working on? It's electroform. And I had never heard of electroforming. I didn't know that this was a process in which you could molecularly unite alien materials. And he brought down this silver brooch that had been electroformed, and it had been united with a piece of tourmaline, unrefined tourmaline, and there was a Baroque pearl at the top. I screamed. I had never seen anything like it. I bought it, and from that moment on, I was hooked. That was 1967, and it has never stopped. And I have to say, the one thing about COVID is that none of us are getting dressed. We can't wear our great clothes. We have no place to go. If you put on a t-shirt and you pick out a brooch or you put on a bracelet, and you're alive again.
That is so true, Helen. I want to just say in response to that, that my earring game has never been this strong as since March of 2020. And I made a point when we were sheltering in place, I made a point every single day to wear some kind of really important jewelry to me, because it took me out of the domestic, it took me out of the quotidian and that sense that we were all going through, which was like every day is the same. We don't even know which day it is. When I could wear jewelry, it changed my whole gestalt about what I was doing.
My UPS man started asking questions, and sometimes he was stuck on the steps wanting to know about that piece. What are you wearing? What is it doing? It's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's really funny. I definitely, my earring focus has shifted too. I think as many of us have, and especially this idea actually on Zoom, like we have to see ourselves so much.
Yes.
But for me, I think jewelry, I studied material culture when I was in college and really found objects as this way into history. And the thing about jewelry is that you do not have to explain it. You don't have to explain what a ring is. You don't have to explain what a necklace is. It is, as you said, universal. And so it is really this kind of incredible pivot point to take something that people know and through the work of artists like Caroline, really explore new topics and explore them in ways that perhaps people have really not thought of. So it is this really incredible way to open up ideas, open up thinking that really wouldn't have been possible were it something distant, both physically and sort of intellectually, if that makes sense. And on the other hand, I was just thinking about this idea of both adornment and sort of beauty, but also this idea of self-actualization and this sort of creating who you are. And I think that jewelry has this incredible, as you guys just talked about, this incredible potential for not only to be wearing somebody else, but to find yourself in that. So.
Thank you. We're going to come back to that point in a second, but I know I'd spoken privately, I know with Helen and I know with Bella at different occasions, and probably Elizabeth and Caroline as well at different points, about the way that jewelry and wearing it can also form narratives that are incredibly precious to people as, the wearer or the people with whom they're in contact. So Bella, what's your story?
Well, actually, it's sort of what Elizabeth was just saying. Like the first time I think I was really blown away and looked at jewelry really as an art form, I visited the studio of Jennifer Trask, and this was about think 12 or 13 years ago. And just completely, my mind was blown because I had never seen, brooches or necklaces or earrings look the way that she was able, to carve them out of bone. And I thought, oh my, like it really sort of expanded my understanding of what jewelry can be. And then this idea of attaching a narrative to it, right? So like attaching Jennifer's story to it, like that again, to me was just, and at that point I was actually working in a gallery where we sold jewelry. And so I was surrounded by these really beautiful pieces, signed pieces made from precious materials. So like I had an understanding, but but to me, just kind of seeing that it was a completely different expression, and I was blown away. And like from that moment on, I think like my entire like trajectory kind of like changed, but I also think that's what makes the narrative, that's sort of what makes this work so rich and so, unlike anything else either, even though we don't want to like, categorize it, but still, like, I think that's what makes it so special.
Thank you. Caroline?
I was thinking about how I would paraphrase, or just not paraphrase, but just like talk about the beginning. And I went to Virginia Commonwealth University, and I was just determined to be a painter. And my brain doesn't work that way. I build things, and so that first year I learned that, and then I decided to investigate craft as a perhaps more practical choice, than painting. And that was all I was going on. I was just kind of like surfing around. And I took a ceramics class, fabric design, jewelry, and metalsmithing. And this was back when the course catalog was in paper, and you could like look for things, that you didn't know existed. And I've always been kind of put together, like there are pictures of me as a little girl with like little purses and things like that. And I made my own clothes when I was in high school. And so I thought, jewelry, I wonder what that's about. And fell in love with it. And my professor was Jim Meyer. And I remember him showing me the work of Tuna Vigeland. And he was kind of recruiting me. He was like, this is what you need to do with your life. And I looked at those images, and I remember clear as day turning to him and saying, this is possible. And he said, yes. And I said, done, I'm in. Yeah. And that work is so powerful and so amazing. And I ended up finding a pair of her earrings, and I wear them, when I need to feel like armored in some way, and that's what jewelry can do for us, and we've all talked about it with different things, but it's it's like just putting on one more piece of like a shell or protection, and it's amazing.
Yeah, well, there's a very long tradition of that in jewelry, for protection, talisman, amulets, and ritual. So I'm so happy to hear you contextualize that in the contemporary world. And that's also a really nice segue to the use of, or the potential of, adornment and art worn on the body in the form of jewelry as a tool for communication. And there are a number of examples. Helen, you had organized an exhibition of Madeleine Albright's brooches, who has been very outspoken, used of her use of jewelry as a tool for communication, nonverbal communication. And then, of course, many artists have discussed this, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
About communication.
About using jewelry as a tool for communication, or a better word maybe that you had mentioned earlier was pageantry. So
But, you know, the Madeleine Albright project came as the retaliation against what she was wearing. I couldn't tolerate the fact that she had a cast gold bird on a pearl roaming around the world. And I wrote an article called Bye Bye Birdie, and then I invited everybody to make work. I mean, it was offensive to me that she would have, you know, throughout the world without selecting work by artists that has significance. And that was the raison d'etre really for them. And then of course her own personal collection was then shown at museums. And the piece that she wore on the cover was the piece that Heisbacher made.
Yes, the Statue of Liberty.
Right. But so that was a kind of interesting, you know, project because it was in opposition really to what she was wearing. And I wanted to broaden the spectrum and also educate the world with in other countries. So, you know, it is communication. And, you know, look, you have the artist, you have the wearer, and you have the object. And no matter where you are, I know in my life, I am constantly being stopped on the street, stopped in a restaurant, stopped in a train station by people that I would never anticipate even wanting to speak to me, asking me to tell them what I'm, or to take notice about a brooch, you know, even if it's just a simple brooch. So it's a mass, jewelry is really a communicator. I mean, you could be wearing beautiful Afghani pieces and people are so excited about seeing them. It doesn't have to be contemporary. It can be tribal, you know, it's wonderful. We have to just go for it.
I couldn't say it better than that. And also you bring up a point that jewelry, contemporary jewelry can also critique traditions of jewelry or the materials that are conventionally used in jewelry making.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually one of my sort of favorite conceptual parts of what we might think of as contemporary jewelry, is that it gets to be both the subject and the object. You know, it gets to be jewelry that is at once itself and then about jewelry. And I think that that kind of internal commentary is what can really make you sort of sit with a piece for quite a long time and perhaps change meanings both for yourself and for those that are seeing it. I think about in the Rings show, actually, I think about Adam Grinovich's piece with these giant cubic zirconia diamonds, you know, and it is right, taking all those tropes of the diamond and sort of playing with them in ways that are both sort of playful, but also quite serious, and sort of drilling into what those really mean and what those mean culturally. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, jewelry has always been, you know, it speaks for people, right? I mean, you think about the suffragists all the way up to contemporary times. I mean, with Kamala Harris, you know, wearing, you know, Wilfredo Rosado's pearls to the inauguration, and then all of these, you know, women wearing pearls and watching her, you know, on TV, wearing their pearls at home, right? So, I mean, jewelry has always really sort of, regardless of the type of jewelry, it's always been a marker, you know, it's always been a badge for a certain group, you know, and I think that is also what makes it different than sort of other types of adornment, right? Sort of like that meaning, right? And the fact that you find all of these sort of moments in it for yourself, the allegiances that, you know, that you form with a certain group that wears a certain piece. And I mean, we see that with, you know, studio jewelry as well, right? I mean, it's very much, you know, if you walk into a room and you spot someone wearing a piece, you know, like Helen is wearing this incredible piece by Liv Blauer. I mean, you see that, you're sort of like I guess I would immediately, go up and have a conversation with her about it, right? So I think that's what is so interesting about it, is this, like, these allegiances that you're able to sort of form through jewelry.
And think about Lady Gaga wearing
Yes.
Yeah.
that dove piece
Yeah.
during the inauguration. That was really amazing.
Yeah.
And then I remembered that, was it Renee Lalique that made the branch with all the pigeons that was given to Mrs. Woodrow Wilson during Armistice Day? And they were supposed to be like doves apiece. And when I saw Lady Gaga with this amazing dove, I thought to myself, go for it, lady. Symbolically, she was telling the world what was really important.
Yeah.
And there it was.
So what are some examples, or what are some thoughts about taking it a step further and like Helen said, embracing the pageantry or the performance of the wearing and enjoyment of adornment in the public space?
I don't understand.
So there's communication, but there's also not specifically related to that occasion that you mentioned about Lady Gaga, but she's a performer, and she often uses adornment as a form of performance or parading to underscore her identity as a performer who is embracing the outrageous and self-identity and celebrating pride in one's individuality. So how does contemporary jewelry help facilitate this?
Well, it's like the most compact marker you can have, so it's just like loud and proud right here, I mean, it's on the architecture of the body, right?
Right.
And so, I mean, we've talked about its portability, we've talked about its significance and, recent events politically and or political events. I mean, it goes from the range of like the hyper personal would be the wedding ring, all the way to, this example of Lady Gaga's dove, right? And so it just comes back to that basic need of all of us, that are here on planet Earth, wanting to put something on our body, whether that's in our ears, around our neck, or around our wrist, or around our ankle. It's and whether that's made out of string or wood or gold, or gold and wood, like Dorothea Prull's gorgeous necklace. And I never knew that those spirals were there in that work. And, looking at them yesterday, I was just like, more in love with it, and I mean, I've loved her work as much as Tuna Vigeland's, from I can't even like tell you how long I've loved this work, but it's something that we haven't really talked about in terms of like the making of it and how it sits on the body, and how the body is such a site for jewelry to hold, and the thought that goes into making based on that architectural or movement, within the work is pretty intense, and if we think about it in as someone that's making furniture, like the most beautiful connections that you can make to build a cabinet or whatever, dovetails cut with a Japanese saw, I mean, it's like that kind of geeking out on making things sit on these collarbones, or hang just right on an ear and like, fit someone's cheekbone. It's something that jewelry just has, a maker has to inherently think about these things, whether they're working with gold or working with wood or whatever. Sorry, rampage.
Yeah.
As an educator, and I guess I don't want to say collector, but as a wearer, you have to have confidence also.
Yes. Yeah.
I remember 2 occasions I was wearing a huge Naga bib made of cut coral, that must have been 5 or 6, inches in width. And and somebody made a really weird remark about, did I really think that I was living in India or Nagaland, as a contemporary woman wearing work that didn't fit into my time in history. And then about 2 years ago, I was at an event and I was wearing Jennifer Trask's large torque made out of antler and gold frame. And a very well-known curator from a very important museum in New York came over to me and said, I guess you would like to be hung on a wall. I never forgot that. I mean, she was offended by the scale of the piece. She was offended by the materials. She obviously didn't understand the work at all. And she saw it as a frame for a picture and made this terrible sarcastic remark. So you have to be able to have enough confidence to be able to feel secure about what you're wearing, to be able to defend the artistic venture into an unusual scale or an unusual use of materials, and to understand it. And I think, that's very important as the wearer, that you are also connected with the artist and connected with the concepts, and you are a communicator.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say what I really love is that I know if I walk into a room, that probably no one else will be wearing the same jewelry that I will be. And that, I think is probably right. And that I think is such a great way to also to talk about the work and also to share the message of the artist who made it, right? Because like Elizabeth touched upon this earlier, is that there's something very intimate, right? I mean, when you're wearing this type of work, which commands a lot of attention, you want to be able to, you're carrying the message and the story of the person who made it, and sort of to Caroline's point, someone who put a lot of, time and dedication into, thinking about not just sort of the materials and the wearability, but the concept, right? Like, what is it that sparked in them this desire to make this piece? What is this saying, on their behalf? And so I think that's also really important consideration as well, is that when you're wearing these pieces, it's about this beautiful work, but it's also about this beautiful message that comes with it as well.
Yeah, and just to kind of follow up on that, on the other side of the sort of performative and public aspects are these incredibly intimate aspects that are so personal and so just for oneself. I think about Melanie Belenker's work in Hair and how she's offering this sort of public side of the work, but also this side that is just for the wearer, just for one person. And so I think that, and I do think that is part of this very, very personal relationship that we then have with these works.
And, think about the very contemporary model of mourning jewelry, with Melanie's work and the link to such a rich history in jewelry, and it's powerful. It is so powerful. And it's linked, so
It's wonderful. So.
Well, let's connect that touch on craft with the immediate exhibition, which focuses on the material of wood, which is deployed by contemporary artists who I would argue have close to the same skill in woodworking as they do in metalsmithing. So first of all, let's focus on the craft and what the craftsmanship of wood might offer a wearer. What it's like to, Helen, maybe we'll start with you. What's it like to wear a piece of jewelry that's made in wood?
I'm not so, it's no different to wear a piece of jewelry made in wood or in any other material if I'm drawn to artistic core in the birth of the concept. And if that concept, leads one to making wood, then
Mhm.
it's, I don't think about the division of materials. I'm really involved with the ideas and the concept. I think wood is wonderful because it's so malleable. It has such a variation in color. Not only does it have a variation in color, but it can also absorb color, as in the Blavok's work. It can absorb color. You can combine 2 or 3 different kinds of wood and marbleize it. There's a brooch in which 2 or 3 kinds of wood have been used from Czechoslovakia. So I just think it's another material that allows you to explore the whole concept of decoration and wearability and the history of our field.
Mhm.
And I think, from the roughness of the beautiful, very plain, very simple carved elements to the richness of the baba, where every element is linked together in order to give you an unintentional whole. Who would ever think that those links could create these amazing, flexible, beautiful necklaces that are also dyed
Mhm.
with color? So,
But they're also sensual,
right.
as
Oh,
physical objects, yes, and
Yeah.
and they conform to the body in a beautiful way. And I'm not sure if she had used another material that it would have offered. So her conceptual choices led her to wood, I would guess, in addition to her sort of her
and you can
environmental surroundings.
also, you can carve wood, you can build with wood, and you can build a necklace, and you can carve with wood, and you can do many things. So it offers you this great diversity and of technique, but it also offers you a great diversity of concept.
And
Somebody,
the way that it feels too is
Yeah.
quite, significant to talk about. And it's like the way that it sounds when it clanks
Yeah.
together, it's like a hollow sound almost, and instead of something that would be, like a metal sound, right? And it has a warmth, and as Helen said, it can absorb. So if you're wearing a lighter piece of wood on your body and it's moving on your body and you wear it a lot, it's going to kind of take on your patina, and you will start to wear on that piece. And I think that it I don't, it's as rich as anything else, but it has different just sensibilities, and characteristics that you have to consider, of course, like, being a metalsmith, I can really directly work something from start to finish at my pace, whereas a ceramicist has to wait for the material and has to be gentle, and me working in clay is like, a monster, because I'm used to working with a material that talks back a lot, right? And and working in wood, it's almost a common ground between clay and metal, because you have to allow it and think about its response to the environment or what you're doing to it, more than a jeweler would.
but Babette Vandenami's piece makes noise. It clanks. It's
Yeah.
not soft. It's almost like a xylophone. If you walk and you're wearing it, you're making a noise because it's just they're long rectangles and they just clank and make a lot of noise. It's like having a cowbell around your neck.
Right.
And don't forget the olfactory qualities of wood. It's a material that bears its own scent for many, for many years, even as it's dynamically changing, shifting, condensing, expanding over time and due to elements. It's a dynamic material.
It's also, I really love the sort of, again, conceptual idea of it. It was something that was alive. It was really a body that then you are wearing on your own body. there's something really beautiful about that. And as you said, this real sensory that is so specific to it, the weight, the warmth, the sound, and as you rightly pointed out, the smell. It's a great point.
Thank you. Well, I'm gonna give it up to questions from the people who have hung out with us this hour. But before I do that, I feel like I need to sum up with a question that is the second part of the title of tonight's talk, which is why should we care, or why should you care about the field?
Why do we breathe?
That's it. That's it.
Perfect.
Shut it down. That's absolutely it. I feel the same way, Helen.
Yeah, well, it's you know, we're here to offer, you know, as makers, objects that can help you mark your life, you know, or mark your way in the world. So you should care about the field because we're here for you.
You know, it's funny. I was thinking you should care about the field because of the community. So it's like Caroline's like, we're here for you. And I'm thinking like, we're here for you, you know, because, because you know, again, like this idea that you know, it's independent, you know, makers. You know, it's people who put their heart and their soul into the work. And because, you know, it's work that I think also, you know, like we were saying, is for us, for those who, you know, consume it, they're markers of important moments in our lives, right? And so then we attach meanings to it. And then it's these relationships that we form with the people who are making these pieces that are markers of importance in our lives. You know, I mean, it's really kind of, you know, it kind of comes full circle, you know, and so you really want to support a field that, you know, in so many ways gives back, you know, so I think, I don't know, I think that's why we should care.
It's quite beautiful. You
Yeah.
know, the outcome is beautiful, but the experience of it is also very beautiful.
Yeah, it really is a global village, I have to say, even though it's a field that goes really across the world. It is so deeply connected. And once you're sort of a part of that, it's a really lovely way to understand the world and the work.
Well, I'm convinced. So let's hear from everyone else. Let's see if we have any questions. Okay, everyone's very shy. So we will.
Nava, there is a question in the chat.
Okay. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Thank you, Bella. Thank you. Mel Young has asked, how does woodwork in the narratives of place inherent in jewelry? Oh, one of my favorite questions ever. Thank you. So how does wood convey place in the context of jewelry?
I think one, like Terry Tolvanen's work, you know, is really significant as you know, pieces of wood that are, I'm assuming, found or local to her practice. You know, I think that, you know, you see something, you pick it up, you put it on, right? And so like taking that from the most basic example of, you know, just adorning oneself, but you know, being able to source material hyper locally is really beautiful, you know, in terms of the wood that is around us. You know, and then there's all these other considerations with it being a living, breathing thing that you have to like treat a special way. But you know, I think that we're all very considerate of where materials come from in the jewelry field, you know, and sometimes we look away a little bit, but you know, in terms of mining of materials, but there's a deep call for needing to know where these things come from and if they've been sourced ethically. So, you know, I think that the question kind of overlaps a lot of these things, right? You know, and just that democratization of materials and jewelry, and you know, what can be used from, you know, broken spoons from IKEA, you know, the plastic can be carved to, you know, anything that you find. So I think it all kind of fits in, you know, however you decide to mine the material that you find, right? So that's what I'm
Well, I'll just underscore something that you said, Caroline, about wood being bringing with it its provenance and its history, and this can connect to place, but it can also connect to time passing. I mean, it is literally written in the cells visually of a piece of wood what has happened in the tree's history, and that presents a lot of wonderful narratives for any kind of art making that is unique to the material.
It's also both universal,
Yes.
right? Trees are everywhere, but incredibly specific, individual to that particular place, that particular moment in time. So it's an interesting document almost in that way.
We have another question from Tony. Hi, Tony. Volker Atrops, who is a landscape architect as well as a jewelry artist, grows his own boxwood with which he makes jewelry. So that's, yeah, that's important to note. And then Zoe Brand is asking, is all jewelry good or powerful? What about bad jewelry? And bad is in quotation marks.
What about bad art?
yeah, I mean, who decides?
Yeah.
I mean, so it's kind of a tough one. I mean, if we think about, you know, that idea of access, you know, and you know, we can think about like perhaps my idea of bad jewelry is something that, you know, is like super thin and like, you know, just a wisp of gold or whatever, and you know, it's sold at a big box store or something like that. But you know, it becomes powerful to someone that can go out and get that.
Right. It might be an entree to someone being interested in learning more about the field. And
yeah. And so, I mean, the bad jewelry of, you know, the little butterfly necklace that, you know, my father gave me when I was like 5. I love that thing and I wish I could find it and I want to make it again. And if I'm going to make it again, it's going to be out of like beautiful, you know, 18 karat gold or whatever. But it's like where that came from is like a bad place, you know? But my father gave it to me, and so it like makes it beautiful. And so I don't know. It's just who decides.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about like the eye of the beholder, right? I mean, so again, like what we may consider to be bad jewelry, right? Someone else actually considers to be like the best thing that they've ever gotten, and it gives them power, right? So like, again, like going back to sort of the beginning of this conversation, that jewelry is so incredibly personal to the person who's wearing it. So like, there, you know, I guess we're almost at like, we're not at liberty to say that it's bad because, and sometimes you wear it because maybe you even think it's bad, but there's something, do you know what I mean? Like there's something about it that there's some sort of meaning you've attributed to it. And like, and that's what makes it special to you.
That's the marker and yeah. I mean, that's just the power of jewelry.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we could take a look at the back to the question of provenance of materials, and if something has been mined through human slavery, or, I mean, there are a number of ways that we might classify bad jewelry, but without having that specificity, your responses are fantastic. There is a question about why should we care about contemporary jewelry from the point of view of someone who works in fine jewelry. They find that jewelry professionals and specialists very quickly poo-poo contemporary jewelry. Have you encountered this divide with fine jewelry, or the practitioners, or manufacturers or purveyors of it? And is there a bridge to be built in the future?
I mean, we talked about this in the beginning of, you know, it's always there, right? It's always there of like, what is the best and what is okay and what is like the right way and what is the wrong way, or whatever. And I think that recognizing the skill and attention and ability to make in whatever material you are choosing to make with, whether that's platinum and the most amazing, gorgeous diamonds ever, or wood and, you know, 9-karat gold, but recognizing the skill that is there. And I think that's the bridge, right? Regardless of the inherent value of the material. But, you know, stone setting is really hard, right? And doing it exceptionally well is very hard, and so, I have deep reverence for, professional stone setters and those that are working in the fine jewelry sphere, from that perspective. But I love that work to begin with, but Van Cleef Arpels, all of it. I love it. But it's, it's out of my reach as far as access. But there's something, the bridge is the technical for me, and just not looking from other sides of the river, right? It's like we're making with the same kind of tooling, right? It's just kind of coming out differently, and so you could like make metaphors to food or whatever, if it's like the most beautiful like Italian pastry, or like ho I mean, like whatever, it's like still delicious, right?
So I think Caroline is completely right on, like 100%. When we started Jewelry Week, and when we wanted to make sure that it was a week that incorporated fine jewelry and contemporary jewelry and studio, I mean, all the jewelries, right? The biggest sort of, for us, the biggest thing that would come up quite often from people in the fine jewelry world is like, oh, contemporary jewelry. And I think that really is because they don't see enough of it, right? So like, I think this work isn't seen enough. And I think also what ends up happening is that there's this idea that, oh, it's not made as well as these great examples of, Van Cleef or Cartier or whatever, whatever your marker is. And so I think that the craftsmanship is the most important thing, and the execution. And so I think that is why, and because those who may be sitting, behind a bench somewhere producing these fine jewelry pieces, because they're not exposed to this work, their understanding of what this work is quite lacking. But I think the big bridge is this craftsmanship. And so when you recognize that this work is exceptionally made, just as a great, any great sort of piece made from precious materials, then you sort of say, okay, like we don't need to categorize it, Helen, I'm sorry, I saw you. Yeah.
I think the other bridge is education.
Yeah.
And exposure. I mean, I love, Tiffany. I love Cartier. I will never, ever understand why somebody who is collecting Christo, Francis Bacon, Jasper Johns,
why are they wearing
Cartier and not at our field with the ideas that were so important. I never understood that bridge. It used to bug me all the time, you know.
And rightly so, you know.
I remember a meeting that I had once with a very well-known collector and a curator who told me to please come to have lunch and to wear a Manfred Bishop, because she wanted this person who was a famous collector of Magritte to understand Manfred Bishop. And once I got to the luncheon, all the curator did was admire my hostess's Cartier necklace. We never even got to Manfred Bishop. It was ridiculous. But that's something I never understood. Yeah. Why aren't the art collectors of conceptual art, the art collectors of great contemporary pieces, not educated to understand our field? Why aren't we reaching them?
Yeah, I mean, I really think it's about, I mean, as you said, education, but I also think it's this like general like understanding of like showing your wealth through jewelry, you know, and like that's what we do, you know, and it's or this is how it's like jewelry, it should be like this, but you know, I think it comes down to education, and then just like as you said, Helen, and then
why not show our eye?
Excuse me?
Why not show our eye?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And to go back into like, you know, Nava's question about like, how did this begin for you? The first SNAG conference that I went to, the first jewelry book I bought was Manfred Bishop from Sharon.
And he's going to have a new book coming out in 3 weeks.
I will pre-order.
I also want to say, I think it has to do with confidence. And we've touched upon this already, right? Like, I think, you know, when you wear, you know, a piece of, you know, contemporary jewelry, you have to be able, right, to carry it. You have to talk about it. I think when you're wearing a piece of jewelry that is, you know, by a big name brand or whatever,
you don't have to talk about it.
You don't have to talk about it. And also you don't, and your friends know what you're wearing, right? And like, so, I mean, it sounds so cliche, and I hate like hearing those words come out of my mouth, but I think that's really true. And I see Karen as saying perceived investment. I mean, yeah, I think also, you know, you have to have the confidence, you have to have the knowledge, you have to, you know, if you think about the way art collections are built, there's probably an art collector that's advising when you're purchasing the jewelry, you buy what you love. I mean, it's such a different conversation, you know? So I think that's unfortunately, and again, there's not enough of, you know, this work out in the world for people to see it and to feel sort of comfortable enough with it, right? And I think that's the work that our field needs to do. Like, you know, as much as
and you are doing, you know, with New York. Yeah, and you know, it's
so why we should share. There we go.
Yeah, I mean, there's more work, but it's after this meeting, like after this topic, we need to like go back to our laptops and keep working tonight. Like there's more that needs to be done.
Well, I'll say, if anyone's doing the work, it's the 4 people here speaking on our panel. So again, I can't underscore enough for those who are familiar with contemporary jewelry, for those who aren't. These are the people with you know, who are elevating the conversation and getting the word out. We have time for one more question, and it's right here from Alice. Any advice for the new contemporary jewelers on how to educate the customer about confidence to wear a contemporary piece? I feel that people need confirmation still about what to wear, and they're still pretty insecure, and that makes them choose a renowned brand rather than a more conceptually driven work.
Well, you know, I think, you know, if you are working with a customer or a client that really likes your work, but is just a little hesitant, think about what you could make for them, right? And try to maybe they don't have the confidence to wear a piece that Helen would wear, on the train, but you could give them a smaller piece, and I think, something else to just consider, and some advice that I would give to any young maker in this field, is to diversify your practice. I once heard, or I once was told by a gallerist, that earrings are the cookies for collectors. Okay, so nobody really wants the earrings, but except now we're in Zoom land, so everybody wants the earrings. But think about maybe a slightly larger than normal earring might be a good way to kind of help this client, boost her confidence, right? Or his confidence. And, I think once you kind of get some traction, you can get some return on that. And maybe the next piece is a little bit bigger, or a little bit bigger, or just different, or maybe they're always going to just wear something that is slightly smaller, and that's okay, right? And they might not be like grabbing onto your work in the conceptual way that you are. They may like it for other reasons, but I've always, in my own practice, thought that when my work is released from me and out into the world, it has its own life, right? And I'm not in charge of it anymore, right? And it's collecting its own stories, and it's doing its own work with whoever has it, right? And that kind of carries on its own trajectory, right? So the love affair that we have as makers with our work just kind of like ends when it's done, right? And we go through that like small grief period, and then we have to like make something else quickly, right? So hold back a little bit, and see what you can do with that client.
Oh, that's great advice.
Somebody has to have confidence also
Yes. Yeah.
into something that is not for now.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Well, on that note, thank you so much, Helen, Elizabeth, Caroline, and Bella. This has been so much fun for me and for the center. It's been an honor to host this discussion. I look forward to seeing the work of all of you and your contributions continuing into the field and supporting it. Thank you so much for all the makers who've joined our conversation today, and all the creativity and enlightenment you bring to us, the people who study your work and talk about it and present it. And for all of you who support the field as collectors, as gallerists, as curators, as writers, as advocates, and many, many more. Thank you so much, everyone.
I just saw a name from Australia. Helen.
Yeah. And oh, don't forget, David Bielander, whose work is in the exhibition, is going to be speaking with us on Zoom on October 4th, which is a Monday at 2 p.m. So please join us for that. David is an exceptional speaker and a very fun person and an incredible artist. So keep in touch for that. But in the meantime, everybody can unmute themselves for a minute. We'll give it a minute and say hi, and then we'll sign off. Hi, thank you so much for joining.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Helen.
Hello. Yeah.
To you
Hi.
all.
Excellent.
Hi,
Thank you.
Hi, Rick.
Bye.
Hi.
Hey, Rick and Ruth.
Hi, everybody. It was uplifting.
Yeah. Wonderful.
And we always have to wear something.
Oh, that's so true.
Yeah.
So our ears don't close up, at least.
The practical considerations of wearing jewelry.
No, we could just we could transfer everything to clips.
I'm not
there's
going
always a
back.
way. There's
I
always
won't go back to my daughter's pediatrician to open my ears again. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Have a safe and good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.